Have you ever stood up from your favorite chair only to feel like your bones are protesting a little louder than they used to? Maybe you have noticed the little creaks and cracks that weren't there a few years ago, or the way a simple task like bending down to tie your shoes now feels like an event. If you have felt that way, trust me, you are not alone. It's a journey so many of us are on after 60, and for a while, I'll be honest, I thought it was all downhill from there. But what I discovered and what I want to share with you is that it doesn't have to be. Aging bones don't mean a life of limitation. They just mean it's time to adapt, and with a few changes, you can absolutely thrive. I remember waking up one morning a few years back, trying to stretch like I always did, and feeling this deep ache right in my hips and lower back. Not the kind that goes away after a few minutes, but the kind that lingers, whispering that something had changed. At first, I brushed it off. It's just age, I told myself. This is just how it is after 60. But deep down, it did not sit right with me. I didn't want to just accept discomfort as my new normal. I wanted to live fully, not just get by. So I set out to figure out what I could do to work with my body, not against it. One of the first things I learned, and it sounds so simple, was how important movement is. I'm not talking about running marathons or lifting heavy weights. I'm talking about gentle, intentional movement every single day. I realized that when I stopped moving, even just for a few days, my joints would stiffen, my back would ache more, and my energy would dip. It was almost like my body was begging me to stay active in its own not so subtle way. So I started small, really small. I would get up during TV commercials and walk through the house. I'd stretch while waiting for my coffee to brew. I even started doing little balance exercises while brushing my teeth, standing on one foot for a few seconds, then the other. It wasn't about big, dramatic changes. It was about staying in motion, sending the message to my body that I still needed it to show up for me. And the more I moved, the more my bones and joints seemed to respond. That stiffness that used to greet me in the mornings, it softened. Not overnight, but steadily, gently, day after day. Now, moving was one part of it, but there was another piece I hadn't thought much about until I really dug deeper, and that was what I was putting into my body. I'll admit, for a long time, I figured I was eating good enough. A little bit of everything, not too much junk, the occasional salad, you know the drill. But when I started paying attention, really paying attention, I realized that my bones needed more than just good enough. They needed support. I learned about foods that are packed with calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, the nutrients that actually help keep bones strong and flexible. It wasn't just about drinking a glass of milk like we were told as kids. It was about building meals that were rich in leafy greens, nuts, seeds, beans, and yes, a little bit of sunshine whenever I could get it. I swapped out some processed foods for simpler, more natural ones. I added almonds to my snacks instead of crackers. I started throwing spinach into almost everything: smoothies, omelets, you name it. And you know what? Over time, my body felt the difference. My energy was steadier. My bones felt stronger, if that makes sense. It was like giving my foundation the materials it needed to stay strong. Of course, as I kept going, I realized that strengthening the bones wasn't just about eating right or moving more. It was also about being kind to them. That meant listening when my body whispered instead of waiting until it screamed. It also meant resting when I needed to without guilt. It meant stretching, not just after exercise, but throughout the day. Gentle stretches that kept me flexible, that kept my muscles from pulling on my joints and causing pain. And most importantly, it meant letting go of the old mindset that slowing down was the same as giving up. It's not. It's adjusting, adapting, respecting the changes while still pushing for strength and vitality. One change that really surprised me was how much difference my shoes made. I had always loved my stylish flats and sandals, the ones that looked great but had about as much support as a piece of paper. Well, I learned the hard way that without good, supportive footwear, my knees and hips would ache by the end of the day. So, I invested in a few pairs of shoes that were actually designed for support. And honestly, it was like night and day. At first, I worried I'd have to sacrifice style, but there are so many beautiful, comfortable options out there now. Good shoes were like giving my bones a soft, steady cushion to rely on every step I took. It's amazing how these little shifts, these small, conscious choices, started to add up. They didn't just make my bones feel stronger, they made me feel more confident, more empowered. I wasn't living at the mercy of aging bones anymore. I was working with them, nurturing them, and in return, they were carrying me through my days with a little more grace, a little more strength. And as I kept moving forward, making these small changes, I found even more ways to protect and care for my aging bones. One of the biggest lessons I learned along the way was the power of strength training. Now I know when most people hear strength training, they picture heavy dumbbells and crowded gyms. But that's not what I'm talking about. For me, it started with resistance bands and light hand weights right in my living room. Just simple movements, a few minutes a day, aimed at building muscle around my joints to help support my bones. I remember feeling a little silly at first, curling those tiny weights while watching my favorite TV shows. But over time, it made a huge difference. My balance improved, my posture got better, even my stamina for everyday activities like gardening or going for long walks got noticeably stronger. It wasn't about becoming a bodybuilder, it was about giving my body the strength it needed to move safely and confidently. And honestly, it made me feel younger, lighter on my feet. Along with strength, I realized flexibility needed just as much attention. Stretching wasn't something extra anymore. It became a part of my day, like brushing my teeth, gentle stretches in the morning to wake up my body, deeper stretches before bed to help me unwind. Little things like reaching for my toes, stretching my arms overhead, gently twisting my spine. They kept me feeling open and mobile. It was like oiling the hinges on a door that had started to squeak. I wasn't stiff and creaky all day like I used to be, and that made me want to move even more. Another simple change that brought big results was paying attention to my posture. Years of sitting, reading, and leaning over had taught my body some bad habits. Slouching puts extra pressure on your spine and hips, and over time, it wears you down. Once I made a conscious effort to sit up straight, pull my shoulders back, and engage my core, I felt an immediate difference. It wasn't easy at first. I had to remind myself constantly, but eventually it became second nature. And standing tall gave me a sense of pride, a quiet kind of strength that people even started noticing. You look so lively, they'd say, and I knew it wasn't just looks, it was how I felt inside. The last piece of the puzzle for me was finding a rhythm between activity and rest. In my younger years, I had this idea that I needed to push through the pain, to keep going even when my body was begging for a break. Now, I understand that rest is part of the process, not a sign of weakness. I learned to listen to the signals, when to move, when to stretch, and when to simply sit with a good book and let my body recover. That balance gave me more energy, not less. It kept me steady and moving forward without the crashes and setbacks. Adapting to aging bones wasn't about giving up anything. It was about learning a new way of living that respected the changes, honored the strength still within me, and celebrated the fact that thriving after 60 isn't just possible, it's beautiful. And the more I embraced these changes, the more alive I felt every single day. Another thing I never expected was how important connection would be to keeping my bones and my whole body healthy. Staying active wasn't just easier, it was more enjoyable when I had others around me. A simple morning walk with a neighbor, joining a gentle yoga class at the community center, it turned the routines into moments of laughter and motivation. There's something powerful about sharing the journey, about not going alone. It reminds you that you are still vibrant, still growing, still full of life. I also discovered the magic of being outdoors. Sunshine, even just 15 minutes a day, became one of my greatest allies. Not only does natural light lift your mood, but it also helps your body produce vitamin D, something your bones crave as you get older. On days when the weather was nice, I'd find any excuse to step outside, whether it was tending to a few plants, taking a slow walk through the park, or simply sitting by the window with the sun on my face. It's amazing how something so simple can make you feel so renewed. So, if you're sitting there wondering if it's too late for you, let me tell you, it's not. Every small choice you make today can build a stronger, happier tomorrow. Take that extra walk, stretch a little more, choose that nourishing meal, stand a little taller. Celebrate every single step you take toward feeling better in your own body. You deserve to feel strong. You deserve to feel vibrant. And you deserve a life filled with energy, joy, and movement at any age. If you found this video helpful, I would love for you to share your own journey in the comments. Tell me how you're adapting, how you're thriving. Here's to strong bones, open hearts, and a life full of possibility. No matter how many candles are on your birthday cake, keep moving, keep smiling, and remember the best is always yet to come.